is an important bill for our office, and Melanie is very excited and has worked very hard. So we want to turn the time over to Melanie to introduce us to House Bill 228.
Yeah. So I saw everybody raise their hands. The advocates, we have all kinds of different advocates here, but how many have been in advocates for more than 10 years? A lot of you. So who here ever thought, as an advocate, that UOVC would be able to approve claims without cooperation? Really? It's like, it's exciting news. So in the email that you got, there's a bunch of stuff and you can look at that too, but I have this questionnaire that we're going to talk about, and I'm just going to leave it up here. And if you want a copy, I only brought like 25 because they're also in your email. You can get a copy and we'll talk about that later. But this is kind of turned up.
Just
Okay, like this, okay. So, I feel like this bill kind of went through and passed and didn't get like all the fireworks and excitement after it passed that it really should have. So, anyway, I've been celebrating with my husband, having drinks and stuff. Anyway, okay. So what this bill does is, it has two major changes. And so this is the wording on the sexual assault part. I tried to make it really big, but I know that you still can't read it in the back. So hopefully you can follow along if you're on the owl. So this is just the sexual assault part. And so for sexual assault victims, so we're going to pass the reading. I'm not going to read PowerPoint to you. This is really what's important, like who qualifies. And so just for our CJC friends who are here, this questionnaire does not apply to child victims because you already have one that we've been working on. This just allows adult victims to qualify without, this is what we get instead of the police report if they did not file a police report, right? So if they report to law enforcement, we still want the police report because we want to collect restitution. But you can fill this out for them, and then they would be able to be eligible for mental health, lost wages, all of like our full benefits that we offer to all victims. And so you can fill this out for them, but then if they have filed a police report, we're still going to ask for a copy of that because we are still going to collect restitution if possible from the offender. So this is really going to be a really short presentation. Anybody have any questions on this portion for sexual violence?
What does it do? What's it do?
Well,
Did you plant that pepper?
yes, I did. Okay, well, the bill allows sexual violence victims. So we're talking about one at a time. There's a domestic violence thing and then there's a sexual violence thing. So for sexual violence victims, it allows them to be eligible for reparations without reporting and cooperating with law enforcement. But it's not because we want to get them away from reporting or cooperating. We just want them to be able to heal and process their trauma, and really in the long run, they may be better witnesses for law enforcement and prosecution. Okay, any more questions from the back? No. Okay.
When does it go into effect?
Okay, this goes into effect May 4th. Yeah, so Service Day. So I think that's when all of them, unless they have a specific date, are going into effect. Okay. Any other questions on the sexual violence piece?
So if someone had applied previous.
Oh, what was it?
If someone had applied previous, can they, does that open the floodgates or no?
So this is for applications for people who report, who applied after May 4th, right? So the people prior still have the same qualification requirements. That's a good question. Exactly the same.
Will you repeat that one? Sorry.
Okay, so the benefits that they would receive, that they're eligible for, would be exactly the same as if they had applied prior and had cooperated. So this is really gonna benefit a lot of, I think, a lot of you that have victims that come in, and I know that they report to some of you that have sexual violence programs and they're seeking therapy or whatever. They come in like 5 years after an incident or whatever, and they never report it, but they're now trying to process their trauma. Now they can qualify without having to report. In the past, we would have made them go back to the police, make their report so that they would qualify.
We have an online question. So for victims receiving a code R, there's always a law enforcement case number assigned. If the survivor decides to restrict the kit or do no interview code R, would they still need to fill out that additional application for benefits?
So,
I would
Well,
say yes,
I mean-
they're separate.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, that's a good question. No, because we would be able to get that police report saying that they didn't cooperate, right?
But then they would need to fill out that application to actually receive benefits.
This isn't the application. This is in lieu of a police report.
So the
They still need to do the regular long form application. And Gary has a clarifying comment.
So it's completely separate and apart from the forensic exam. The forensic exam piece is not affected in any way, shape, or form. All of those processes remain the same. If the victim then would also like the reparation benefits, they would complete the long form application for that process. And if they not wanted to report the crime or pursue prosecution, we would get the questionnaire completed by you as the advocate, and just completely separate of that. So the reason that Code R is reported is that Utah has a medical report in it. It says you're a licensed medical professional and you are aware that a crime has been committed and you're obligated to report that crime. So in those circumstances, those are just basically getting a police case number from law enforcement, which they've always done and they will continue to do. If we have that information, that's fine. We can get that report, but getting that report and that you say that they didn't want to give a witness statement or pursue any kind of prosecution or investigation will not impact the approval of the reparations fight, provided we get that question.
Yeah, because if they're not talking to law enforcement, then they're not giving the information really that we have, that we're asking for, right? We need to verify, like, that we're paying for one incident for one perpetrator and not like, so we have specific information so that we don't keep opening claims for the same person, the same crime over and over and over again. So they qualify one time for it.
So, and maybe just a little bit of follow-up and clarification to your question about what if they applied 5 years ago and their claim was denied because they didn't want to make a report, they didn't cooperate. I'm gonna on the fly say the best way for us to handle that is send in a new application with the questionnaire. Okay, it will appear to be a duplicate application in our system, but it will allow us to keep that clear and separate and not attached to the prior application, okay? I think that's gonna be the best way to handle that, because we will have state auditors come down and say, oh, look, you approved this claim that was filed 5 years ago, your law didn't change until 2021, and here's an audit finding. Huge hassle. Let's just keep it clean, send in a new application with the questionnaire specific to the crime they were victimized of, and we'll do our best to sanitize that and keep it away from the other ones so we don't have confusion about denied versus approved.
Okay, so I've also had some questions. Oh, there's a question in the back, but while she's bringing you the mic, I'm gonna answer this. So I've had some other questions about, can SANE nurses fill this out? And that is no, because they do not qualify as the victim advocates in the statute that describes like 7738 403 that we're going on. Okay, question in the back?
Yeah, so the questionnaire and the not needing to report or not being required to report to law enforcement, is that just for sex offenses or for everybody?
Yes, so when we get to, no, just for sexual violence. So when we get to, there is also a cutout for domestic violence and it has different requirements for strangulation specific. And so we'll talk about that.
Okay, so just to clarify, when it comes down to like our AMAC clients, like the adults that were molested as children. So as long as the crime happened after that January 1 of 1987, and they applied after May 4th, they could qualify?
Absolutely.
Awesome. See, that's a celebration she's after, right?
Yeah.
That's what we should be excited about.
I just have a question on who can fill that out. I responded out once and there was a hospital patient advocate.
So like an advocate from the Rape Recovery Center or Safe Harbor Sense advocates, or a lot of you have hospital response advocates. They're advocates, right? So I think they qualify under that. And I hope that your agencies that have this hospital response, I believe that you guys are following up, right? Doing follow-up with those clients.
So I just want to clarify, there a few years ago, Representative Snow ran some legislation to give victim advocates additional confidentiality or clarify what their goals were. In that piece of legislation, we identified or defined rather what we refer to as a community-based advocate, a systems-based advocate, and a victim advocate in general. So in this legislation, we refer back to those specific definitions to tell you exactly who we're talking about. Because, we're not talking about kitchen table neighborhood advocates who, are being very supportive of someone they know. It's defined in statute who we're talking about.
Does the abuse have to have happened in Utah, or do they just need to be residents in the state of Utah?
All the rest of the requirements still are applicable, so it has to be something that happened in Utah, or if it happened in a place that does not have a reparation program, then we step up for that.
So there's one online question. So if they choose not to report to the police, but fill out an application, are you then, I'm assuming the application, the advocate, obligated to report to the police because you find out the crime occurred?
So I'm not sure what.
No, you're not.
Not obligated.
Well, if they're a system-based advocate, are they, what are they? I don't know what their goals are.
No, not as long as it's not a mandatory reporting or that weird weapon clause.
Yeah, whatever your. We're not gonna make you do it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, if it's a child, absolutely, you all have to report, and we do verify that. We think that there's something on a child that hasn't been reported, we will report. So, okay, so I'll just move on. Any other sexual violence questions? We'll move on to domestic violence. Okay. Cool. So this is the legislation on second part of the legislation that talks about domestic violence, or they call it interpersonal violence strangulation. And so we wanted to be able to capture like any kind of domestic violence relationship, but we couldn't say intimate partner because it's not just an intimate partner. But we have cases where adult men strangle their mothers, or, you know, roommates, or other people that fall within the domestic violence statute, if they, are strangled, for this thing is different, the questionnaire won't work. They have to file a police report or seek medical care immediately following the strangulation. Right, and so I think right now, we're immediately following when I talk to like medical providers. Is, I think we're gonna stick within the 72 hours, we haven't defined it like that, but exactly, yeah, we're still working through that, but we're looking at 72 hours is immediately following a criminal incident. It's still within where they can still medically see the injuries. Right, so, any questions on this part? Rose?
Does that make it to where you pay the same bill for strangulation?
No, we do not pay for forensic exams. So the question was, will we pay the same to do the examination? No, we will not pay for the forensic exam, we'll pay for the ambulance ride, all the medical care that they receive at the hospital following the incident. Also a big deal, y'all. Woo-hoo.
Just to make sure my brain is following, so, someone is strangled and they report it to law enforcement, and after they make some decisions in their life, they don't want to participate in the criminal justice system, they would then still qualify
They
for
still
this
qualify.
assistance support. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so when we got the data from UOVC on the lab participant, like from their lab participants, there were an average of like 2,600 people a year who reported when law enforcement were called out that they had been strangled by their partner. And we had about 20 applications saying that they've been strangled, right? So this opens the door to a lot of people, and the ambulance, when the ambulance called, they're saying people don't want to go because they don't want to go to the hospital. They don't want to seek that medical care because they are worried about a medical bill. So I think this has the opportunity to help like thousands of people. Any more questions on domestic violence?
We do have an online question. Okay, so this goes to, the questionnaire available for sexual assaults occurring between now and May 4th. So this kind of window. Can the victim advocate from organizations like the Rape Recovery Center fill it out during the CODAR and submit it, or would the survivor need to fill it out after May 4th?
This is after May 4th. So the questionnaire, and just so you, like we're clear, they need the actual application or normal application, which Rose has brought a bunch of, and you can find online, and then they also need the questionnaire, like both. Okay.
Just for final clarification, does Just for final clarification, does the advocate fill out the questionnaire or does the victim fill out the questionnaire?
The advocate fills out the questionnaire. Okay, so any more questions on HB 228? There's one in the back. There's one online.
Oh, wait.
Does the report have to say that there was strangulation? Or can they clarify that in the form?
It has to say there was strangulation.
Okay.
And the questionnaire is not used on the domestic violence portion,
Oh,
only
okay.
sexual violence.
Does the report have to be made within that 72 hours?
The statute says immediately following.
Okay.
So it's gonna have to be, it can't be like 3 months later, they come to your shelter and they say, oh, I was strangled 3 months ago, you know.
I just want to kind of clarify that a little bit. What we're really trying to get at in both of these, primarily in strangulations, we know in instances of strangulation, the lethality goes through the roof.
Over 700%.
And we know that there's all sorts of hesitancy to not seek medical care, right? You go to the hospital and get an $1,800 emergency room bill, I'm probably gonna get my butt kicked again. Don't want to have to deal with that. So this is to step in and say, go get the care. That's what's important. And we can either use the documentation that is created when they receive that medical care to support their claim and approve it. Or if they choose to report it to law enforcement instead and have reported that and indicate that they've been strangled, and then later decide we don't want to pursue this any further, it also allows us to support no limit claims in those cases. So our statute requires that in any case, our reparation officers to receive investigative or other information to help support that someone's been a victim of a crime. So in sexual assault cases, we're going to use the questionnaire for that purpose. And in the strangulation cases, medical documentation or their report to police to support that.
Can the police report use any of the strangulation language? Because a lot of times the police reports don't say strangulation, they say choking or.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it could be, I think you don't say necessarily strangled, we define it in the statute differently, like it would be restricting breathing.
Right, yes, strangulation is not defined anywhere in Utah statute. But again, a few years ago, Representative Snow ran some legislation to enhance acts of strangling someone in domestic violence scenarios. The medical community provided the terminology of what constitutes strangulation. So essentially restricting the breathing. So as we read through those, or we're talking to the victim about a nail on my throat, put his hand over my mouth so I couldn't breathe. All of those kinds of things, they're not going to say he strangled me. Most of them will say he choked me. But they will articulate some manner in which they restricted the breathing. That constitutes strangulation for this purpose.
Yeah, the statute here actually reads strangulation means any act involving the use of unlawful force or violence that impedes breathing or the circulation of blood, is likely to produce a loss of consciousness by applying pressure to the neck, throat of an individual, or obstructing the nose, mouth, or airway of an individual. Okay, so that was online?
Yeah.
Oh, there is. There is.
The internet's iffy.
Okay, so, and then we have just a few more minutes.
If there is a victim of strangulation and they reported it to law enforcement and were not referred to an IPV exam, do they have the right to request one from them?
So when they say that, are they talking about a forensic exam? IPV?
Yes.
Okay, so we are not, like, I don't know. Does anybody else know if they have a right to request law enforcement provide a forensic exam on strangulation?
Like semi-speak to it. I had a conversation with my LT about this once, where the police department will get billed for those. So I think it does have to happen on scene with the officer kind of guiding that, so that way that bill goes to the police department, and they're able to adequately pay for that, and that doesn't go to like the victim or anywhere else. I'm not too sure.
I had a situation a while back where the highway patrol didn't realize that the forensic exam would not be paid by highway patrol for their investigation. And they had already started the exam, and I had to let them know that that wasn't provided for. Is there going to be education? Is there going to be anyone pursuing?
I think
finding
that
the
sounds like
police
great project that the advocates could get together and work on for a statewide initiative.
Because we were gonna write into our, like, our grant, need some funding. Or to pay.
That would be amazing. Okay, any other questions on domestic violence, or sexual violence part? All right, thank you. So, sorry, Rose and I will be available to answer any questions while we're here, like on the reparation program, or if you have any weird scenarios with your clients that you would like some help on, we'll be available.
Good, thank you so much. And really, thank you for making this bill a priority and getting it passed, because I do think it's benefits, so. Great, with that, it is lunchtime.